It's a pleasure. I love telling them. And I think there were something like 8 or 9 guests standing on the rock drinking their whiskies and champagnes and whatever. And everything was perfect. It was a lovely setting. So I got the guests up onto the rock and thought, well, I'll have a quick drink with the guests. And then I asked, well, where's the ranger and tracker? Why aren't they on the rock with my guests? And it turned out that they'd wanted to have a cigarette and they weren't ever allowed to smoke in front of guests. So they'd climbed off the rock and gone and stood right out in the open. And while they were standing there, we could hear a lion roaring down the river. And a couple of the guests said, John, is this safe? And I said, absolutely fine. I'm the great white hunter. No harm will come to you. But I said, no, they'll smell us when they get close and they'll kind of skirt around us and carry on with their night. But they did actually skirt away from us, but then straight on a target with the ranger and tracker who were having a cigarette break in the middle of this open field. And they chased the ranger and tracker, who instead of standing their ground, ran to us and up onto the rock. So we now had a situation where the male lion had gone to the left of the rock and the female had gone to the right of the rock, and we couldn't see them at all. We had no torches with us, just all of us standing on this rock, people with their ice tinkling in their glasses as they sip whiskey, but now they were pretty terrified. And the only thing I could do was to basically make a run for the vehicle, not knowing where the lion were, but knowing they were very, very close. And I told my assistant, a guy called Andy Bowden, that when I ran, he was to follow me, and I would jump onto the bonnet and then jump over the windscreen and pick up the rifle, which had a bracket just on the dashboard. And I'd pick up the rifle, and he had to follow me and pick up the spotlight. And then as I stood, he would spotlight, and if the lion was there, we'd see what happened. Anyway, I was a little bit too enthusiastic to get to the vehicle, so when I jumped onto the bonnet and grabbed the rifle, I actually fell right out the door of the vehicle and jumped up and pointed the rifle, and the lioness was about 3 meters from me, flat on the ground, ears straight back, tail whipping left and right, ready to pounce. And Andy was holding the spotlight, but it wasn't very effective because it was like shaking the whole time. So I could tell he wasn't very impressed. And that's the closest I've ever come. Everything inside me said, shoot the lioness. She's going to kill you. She's going to charge at you from 3 meters. There's nothing you can do, so kill her. And it's a very primal instinct that makes you, urges you, to show your power and your brutality. And then just good reason settled over me, and I just started talking to her very quietly and just saying, I don't want to hurt you, and I'm sure you don't want to hurt me, and let's just call it quits, and you back off and everything will be fine. And she just literally started to relax. And after a couple of minutes, she then got up and stretched and turned and then walked off into the night. But that's the closest I've ever come to actually shooting an animal in the wilds. But the anecdote to that, which was quite funny, is we had a really tough Australian lady who was a multi-millionaire, but she owned coal mines. So she was a really rough and tough lady. And she was convinced this whole thing was just a scam. It was just a play act that we did to impress the guests. We're now trying to get all the guests to the safety of the vehicle because we didn't know, even at this point, where the male lion was. And all the guests were only too happy to get through the sloot and up onto the vehicles in relative safety. And we literally had to physically manhandle this Australian woman because she was not going to finish her drink. She wanted to stay there and just enjoy the night and actually get her onto her vehicle. But I don't think for the rest of the time she was with us that she actually believed that there was danger at that point. But living in the bush, it's like that. You actually live for those moments too. And you get some very funny ones as well. But it's a lifestyle. And it's healthy and it's strong and it's vibrant. And I don't think guests always appreciate just, what goes on at these lodges and the risks that you have to take at times. But magnificent. So there's a couple of stories for you. 3 stories. It's a pleasure. I love telling them.